From the southeastern corner of western North Carolina, this is Polk Lore. I'm your host, James Hernishan. Election season is upon us. As usual, we're told that this year's will be the most important election of our lives. And not for the first time, I agree. Come November, Americans will have the chance to, once again, choose from two diametrically opposed options when it comes to the most powerful office in the country, if not the world. But here in Polk County, the local election scene is a little less exciting so far. The primaries are coming up fast on March 5th, but the ballots, all 5 of them, are relatively short. There are separate Democratic and Republican ballots, one for the half of the country who live in the congressional district NC-11 and one for those in NC-14, plus a Libertarian ballot for the handful of registered Libertarians. There won't be any primaries for the school board and no Democratic competition for the 3 open county commission seats, although 4 Republicans are asking for a chance to run against the 3 Democrats. Combined with the more or less foregone and largely unwelcome choice when it comes to the presidential race, it's probably a safe bet that turnout will be on the low side. Fortunately, there are some interesting developments worth paying attention to outside of the primaries. For one thing, this will be the first year the school board will involve political parties. More on that in future episodes. For now, I'm going to focus on one of the most overlooked of elections, the one for district court. Polk, along with Henderson and Transylvania counties, are lumped together in what is now called Court District 42. It used to have a different number, but there's no point in confusing you by mentioning it. Judicial elections are partisan affairs around here, but I've always thought that was a particularly bad idea, for what I hope are obvious reasons. So I was pleased to discover that one of Polk County's veteran lawyers, a woman who was appointed last year to fill a vacancy on the district court, is running to stay on the bench as an unaffiliated candidate, which is not an easy thing to do in this hyper-polarized country of ours. Judges aren't allowed to say much of anything that might attract media attention, so you'd probably think inviting her onto Polk Lore would be a bit of a waste of time. But I'm glad to report that my conversation with Lora T. Baker was anything but. She even said a few things that might be considered sorta, kinda political, but in a very limited and reasonable sense. Not many, but enough to justify the next 20-odd minutes of your time. We talked at the county courthouse in late January. Lora Baker, welcome to Polk Lore.
Thank you for having me.
I haven't done a lawyer before in this show, and I'm kind of surprised that I'm doing it because I hadn't really thought too much about judicial elections before. I mean, I'm a Canadian originally, and we don't elect judges. So I'm a little bit out of my depth here. So maybe you can help me, stay on track. First of all, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the legal business.
Okay. Well, originally I'm from Eastern North Carolina. My mom was a teacher. My dad was a principal. I went to law school at Campbell University, met Philip Fagan at Fagan Law Firm in Polk County 15 years ago at a career fair. Came to live in Western North Carolina, work with him for the next 15 years at the law firm, and enjoyed every minute of it.
How long have you been with Phil?
15 years.
15 years. And when did you decide, or what your experiences working as a lawyer, what led you to a decision and say you might want to be a judge?
Funny story. When I initially met Philip, he asked me kind of what my 10-year plan was. And I said, well, eventually I'd like to be a judge. So I guess I had it on my mind even back then. But I didn't seriously consider it until Judge Emily Cowan stepped down and resigned June of last year. It left a big hole on our bench. She was an incredibly effective judge. And we had a really good makeup on the bench. We had men and women, and it was a good kind of collaboration between all of our judges. So I really I'd hoped that we would have a female fill that seat. I think it's good to have a makeup of both genders on the bench. And I think it provides a good perspective. So I decided I'll put my name in when we have our judicial election with our district bar. So I did, and that's how I made it on the bench today.
Right. So you were given a temporary appointment.
I was.
Right.
Judge Cowan resigned in June, which left an opening. She still had a year left in her term, so Governor Cooper is assigned the task of appointing judges to fill the remainder of the term. he gets the names for, who to consider from the local judicial district. So we had a district bar meeting and we put forth 3 names for him to consider, and I was one of those 3.
What's the current gender makeup of the court?
We have Judge Abe Hudson, we have James Marshall, Gene Johnson, and Kim Justice and I. So 2 women and 3 men.
Well, that's pretty good. Your experiences as a lawyer arguing before the judges, what occupied most of your time? In other words, what did you have to think about most often in terms of kind of cases that you were handling?
So what practice areas did I practice in?
Yeah.
I was at a general practice firm, so I handled essentially everything that could walk in through the door of a law firm, mostly criminal and family law, but I did civil, small claims, corporate, workers' comp, Social Security, disability, you name it, our office handled it.
Well, it seems like a relatively good line in your resume if you're trying to apply for the job of a judge, because you are experienced with all the different facets then.
Yeah, I was in district court every week.
I think I might have seen you there a couple of times. I've had the bad fortune to be in a court mostly to do with moving violations.
Traffic court is a good place to meet people.
Yeah. It always surprised me, though, because it's not that it's an informal process, but I remember once the district attorney saying, okay, everybody who's got a traffic ticket, here's how it's going to work. If you want to negotiate it down to something that's not going to affect your license, your insurance, then get in line over here. And it almost seemed like it was a production assembly. There's so many people, and it was a little bit depersonalized, which at first I was a little bit put out, but then I thought, well, this is a pretty good way to work it, isn't it?
So traffic court is kind of like a cousin to regular district court. They try to put on, the vast majority of criminal cases are traffic cases. So we have a special administrative setting just to try to get through that number of cases. And there's usually not a judge in court for administrative court. So I agree with you. I think that is a little depersonalized. But district court's a little different. We do have a judge on the bench, and they still call the calendar, but we don't have people line up kind of like an assembly line in district court like we do in traffic court. And that's one thing I've tried to keep in mind. I know it feels that way when you're in a huge crowd of people, you feel like you're a number. So that's one of the things I've tried to keep in mind when I'm on the bench, is making sure that I give everybody their time and attention so they know that I care about what they care about.
And what is going to be the difference in terms of the kind of cases you deal with now and the kind of cases a district court is going to be hearing? In other words, what's going to change when your perspective is off from the bench?
So it's all the same type of cases I've handled for the last 15 years. So that won't change, the actual cases that come before me, but it is an incredibly different perspective that I don't think you can fully realize until you're in that seat. But it's kind of like the difference between a tree and a forest. Like when you go in as an attorney, you've got this 1, 2, maybe 5 or 6 cases that occupy your attention, and you know them inside and out, every detail about it. But when you're a judge, you're hearing, 120 cases as opposed to those 5 or 6. So everyone that comes in front of you, you have to get the information you need in a relatively short amount of time and make very quick decisions about how to proceed. So the attorneys come in and they know it, and they kind of assume that you do, even though there's no way for you to. But it's ingesting a lot of information in a short amount of time and handling a lot of different cases of different types all at once.
Do you have, maybe it's not a fair question, but are there like favorite judges that, you think, okay, this is going to go a bit better for me today? Because, all the judges are respectable people, I guess, but there must be differences among the judges.
Yeah, so that's called judge shopping when you're an attorney. As a defense attorney, I said that was part of my job, was to try to find the best judge to put a case in front of. As judges, we discourage it. So I guess that's another difference between private practice and being on the bench. You kind of see things differently. But yes, that's done. People do try to pick out a judge, but we try to mix it up a little bit. Sometimes we switch out days, and you're never entirely sure who you're going to have your case heard in front of. And even if you have a court date, sometimes that's continued, and you never know when those continuances are going to stop. So there are limits to being able to pick which judge hears your case.
All right. Well, let's talk a little bit more now about this election. My main question for you, and the reason I really wanted to have you on the podcast, was you're running as an unaffiliated candidate, which in this country is not an easy thing to do. So first question is, why be unaffiliated? Why not just work with one of the parties?
Great question. So I've been unaffiliated for 15 years. It's not something I just decided to do when I was appointed. I didn't change my partisanship. I feel like this is the one job in particular. I think there are others, but this one in particular, I think candidates should be unaffiliated. I don't think someone should come into this job thinking, I'm solidly a Democrat or I'm solidly a Republican, and that's how I'm going to view every case that comes before me. I think if you are that, it's fine to have a partisan designation, but you have to look past it. When you're on the bench, you can't take that into consideration. You have to look at the facts and the law for every individual case. So, I am unaffiliated. I am nonpartisan. That's how I like things about both parties. I don't consider myself solidly one way or the other. And I feel like you kind of have to be unaffiliated, or at least put yourself in the position of an unaffiliated person when you're hearing a case anyway.
Well, certainly my perspective is judges shouldn't be partisan.
Exactly.
And I would love it if all the judges were unaffiliated. And although I'm not endorsing you as a podcast host, I am encouraging people to support the idea of an unaffiliated candidate running. And so the next question is, while running for an unaffiliated might seem like a good idea, ideally, it means a lot of work for you. How many signatures do you have to get on the ballot?
Almost 2,700.
And that's from Polk, Henderson, and Transylvania counties.
That's correct.
How are you going to do that?
Well, we've been up, hit the ground running, so to speak. So when I was appointed in November, that's when things really started to move fast, and we had to try and figure out, how we were going to get this done. It's not a lot of time between November to March. So, we've tried to reach out to a lot of groups, a lot of people active in the community, any businesses willing to put my petition out or willing to pass it around to, their church family or people in the neighborhood. Trying to do a grassroots effort for sure.
It's several times more than, say, wanting to get a board of commissioners thing where it's just one county. You have 3 counties, so it is a lot of people. And do you have good connections in all 3 counties? Do you have a network that you're already working with in all 3 counties?
Well, we're always looking to expand. I don't think you could ever have what you hope to have. I mean, it would be great to just have, 10 businesses in every county putting petitions out. But a lot of people are nervous about, putting out something for anyone, even an unaffiliated candidate. They don't want to see it as being a business owner in politics, which I can understand. And a lot of people are nervous about approaching someone who's asking for a signature, asking for their address. So I understand people's reluctance. I wish I had more connections with different groups to gain petitions, but we're doing what we can.
It strikes me that it might be something like, trying to raise money. I mean, obviously you need some money to run a campaign, but your primary purpose at this point is just to get signatures.
Correct.
But I would think that it wouldn't be that difficult to convince somebody to sign a petition for an unaffiliated candidate, because they're not putting their name behind a party that might annoy someone from the other party.
Right.
So what kind of reactions do you get when you approach somebody?
Well, a lot of times it's avoidance. And to be perfectly frank, since I've taken my position on the bench, I haven't been as face-to-face. I've kind of tried to rely on my friends and family to help, just because I am in criminal court and I do impose criminal sentences. So it's actually kind of dangerous to be out there, in the general public nowadays. But, initially people were willing to take petitions, but, it's getting them back. That's the problem. I don't think anyone has really had a bad reaction to the fact that I'm unaffiliated. I haven't had, a strong person from either party, condemn me for doing that. But a lot of times it's just avoidance. Like if you see somebody outside with a clipboard and a piece of paper asking for a signature, you just don't walk near them. Yeah.
So how long do you have to get these signatures?
March 5th.
Okay. So we're recording this on January the 25th. So you've just got about 6 weeks left. And assuming you do make your goal, what will your campaign involve? And this is really something that I find really puzzling, because you can't run on policy, and you're not as a judge, you're not going to be changing the way anything works.
Correct.
You're not saying, okay, I think we should change the way in which the districts are organized or the number of prosecutors that are available. You're just arguing I'm a good candidate for the job. So what will your pitch be? In other words, what should distinguish you from the folks who are running mostly on a party ticket?
Right. And you're correct. I am limited in what I can say and what I can talk about. Just the Judicial Standards Commission, we can't get into the big, heavy hitting political issues that are, nationwide. But I do think that my 15 years doing district court practice work, appearing in front of judges every week, doing what I do now from the bench. And, since December, I've been on the bench. I've actually been doing the job. So I know what it's like. And I'm sure all the attorneys that practice in front of me have an opinion one way or the other about the job that I'm doing. And I'm sure they'll share that with their communities, whether it's good or bad. So all I can do is, explain my experience, explain my reasons, how I approach cases, that I do think I'm fair and impartial. I do try to give people the time and attention I think they deserve. And I hope that the people that appear in front of me see that.
Do you find yourself in, like coffee shops having conversations about the legal system and talking about, I don't know, your philosophy and how you approach a case? I mean, are there people you can talk to about this? I mean, it just seems like there would be a very small community who could share, could have a conversation that would be meaningful about this.
It is a small community. And, for the most part, I don't think the general public really pays a lot of attention to district court judges. And fortunately for them, that they're not usually very much involved with the district court system. If they have a divorce or they have a speeding ticket or, something of that nature, they may appear in district court and have some idea of what a district court judge does and, how their demeanor may affect them in their everyday life. But for the most part, yeah, it's talking to the people that come into court, the different groups. We've got all kinds of groups, mediation centers, women's violence assistance programs that come into court. Those are the people that we get to talk to decide, do we need a change in the system? Is there something else we could be doing that'll work better? And our district's actually doing some new, like truancy court and drug court, which are just going to be starting this month. But as far as, politicking, so to speak, no, I'm horrible at it.
Well, it's like this is politics for non-politicians.
Exactly.
Right? And I don't know how I would go about making the argument that you should vote for me if I can't really talk to you about
right.
the things that you really care about.
It's difficult for sure.
This is really difficult, I think. And it's one of the reasons why you don't hear or read a lot about judicial campaigns, because there's just not a lot we can talk about. You are legally forbidden from going certain places. And as a result, there's not a lot of attention, as you point out, paid to these election campaigns. And on the ballot, when we look at them in November, a lot of people just skip over the judges, right? I mean, it's not going to take that many votes to put somebody ahead because it's only going to be a subset of the population that's filling in all the blanks. And they won't even probably know the difference between a Republican and an unaffiliated and a Democrat. And they're just going to skip over those parts of the ballot. Would you like the public to pay more attention, or do you think that, it's a good thing really to keep it low key so only the people who have a very well-developed sense of what this is all about are casting ballot?
Well, I'm not a huge fan of, us listing judicial candidates as any party affiliation. I think it would be a good idea to take that off, and so that you have to consider them, on merits other than party affiliation. It's really hard. I've heard some arguments for appointments or, some qualifying factors other than like age, or you having to practice 5 years before you can put your name on there. But there's not a great way. I mean, we're a democratic society. We believe in voting in elections. And I think, that's clearly what we should do. I don't know how you bring more attention to the merits of a particular judicial candidate. And clearly, I think that the court actors, we've got great clerks throughout our district. We've got bailiffs. We have other court staff, that are more intimately involved with judges on a day-to-day basis. And my hope is that, they talk to their families and friends and neighbors and say, this is how I see this judge acting in court, or this is how I see this judge, considering cases, and that they share that information to hopefully educate the public a little bit more.
So from the point of view of your average voter, if they were interested in finding out more about judicial candidates, who should they talk with, or where can they go? I mean, do you have a website?
I do. Facebook page, Baker on the Bench.
Okay.
And that directly connects back to my personal Facebook page. So yeah, I've got a fact sheet about myself and my history, my experience. And I'm more than happy for people to message me and ask questions. I am still limited resources to what I can respond to. I can't talk to any party in any case pending before me right now. But other than that,
But just generically, right, and not just say someone just doesn't know anything about any of the candidates. Are there people they can approach, you think, in the community? Like, you could go to their lawyer? Will their, lawyers should have an opinion
Yes.
about you and your competitors, clerks, anybody who works in the court system. So I could go find one of them and ask them what they think.
you could. No, I don't know how wide of a sample you need to take, but I'd say probably more than one person. And I don't know that the average person would go to that trouble. But yes, I mean, I think even if it's if you're asking about a candidate that's not currently on the bench, like, the clerks would have interaction with that person likely. If they've been practicing in district court, which most people that want to be a district court judge have, they'll have people in the court system that know them, that know how they practice, and they can attest to, this is what I've seen them do or not. Now, I think by the same token, you've got a lot of court staff that probably don't want to say, this is my preferred person or not, because they could end up working with whoever wins, and they don't want to put themselves in that boat. But yeah, I mean, I think the only way you find out about people in this type position are to talk to other people that have been around them and interacted with them.
And the good news is Polk County is a relatively small community, and you shouldn't have to work too hard to find somebody who's in a position to know whether or not you're up for the job, right?
I think so.
All right. Well, that's your task, folks. Find someone who knows somebody who's familiar with how the law works in Polk County, and they'll maybe have an opinion on whom you should support. But again, not endorsing you, but I strongly recommend everybody at least entertain the notion of signing your petition, because unaffiliated candidates are probably the way we should have our judges chosen.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. This is a relatively brief podcast, but again, we can only talk so much.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
That's it for this episode. You can expect more election-themed episodes in the weeks ahead. As always, you can reach me at jamesh@polklore.com with ideas for guests or topics. Thanks for listening.